You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Chicago Bulls lose 119-99 to the Dallas Mavericks, move to 3-5 on the season. Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name's Joe George. You can find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92, TikTok and Instagram at Joe George Radio. Longtime Chicago Bulls fan. Tonight was a tough one for the Bulls, man. Just got ran out of the building. We'll get into those runs that the Mavericks were going on in this game that absolutely crushed the Bulls. Turnover is a huge problem as well. Definitely the best game for Modest as a Chicago Bull, as an NBA player. So huge positive that we'll focus in on in this game. Got to find something in a big loss of 119-99 to find some positives, some light to shine on for the Bulls. And we got to talk about Ayo and what's going on and really the struggles that he's facing tonight, but overall in the season as well. So let's get into this game, because this is an ugly basketball game for the Chicago Bulls. Look, we'll start here. That's obviously just a much better basketball team, the Dallas Mavericks, than the Bulls. Team played in the NBA Finals last year, a team that added Klay Thompson, and really, what are you supposed to have an answer for Kyrie, Klay Thompson, and Luka Doncic? It seems that's going to be tough for any team in the NBA, let alone a team that's missing Zach LaVine, who could return tomorrow night versus the Timberwolves, could return Saturday, will likely return Saturday if it's not tomorrow, without Lonzo Ball. His 10 days are up, but Casey Johnson reported earlier he's still wearing that wrist brace, so don't think we'll see much of Lonzo Ball in the near future either. So just not a lot of positives there on the injury front. I guess Zach's being back tomorrow is a good thing, but you're really struggling against a team that has a ton of talent on it, and they're just running up and down the court all over you in this game. And that's really the big takeaway that you have to have of why did the Bulls lose this basketball game, besides the fact that they're just extremely outmatched talent-wise by what the Dallas Mavericks can run at you. But the reality is the Bulls had 23 turnovers in this game. It led to 28 points. Early in the second, the Bulls had 7 turnovers and 14 points for the Dallas Mavericks in those runs. So that right there, you're just putting yourself behind in a big way by having those turnovers. And once again, the frustrating part of these turnovers for the Bulls is, like, you're not playing teams that are going back into the 90s and trying to play elite levels of defense. The Dallas Mavericks had, I think it's 15 steals in tonight's game, so you're sloppy with the basketball in that way, but that doesn't account for the other 13 turnovers that the Bulls had. And really the Achilles heel of this one, and this is part of that, just that talent differential for the Bulls when they can't hit a shot, some of these guys, to save their lives. But in this game, the Mavs went on a 17-0 run in the first quarter, a 12-0 run in the second quarter, and then a 13-0 run in the third quarter. You just can't win basketball games that way. We all know it. Like we know, like the Bulls are not. That's not good basketball. You can't hit a shot, and that to me is where this game versus the last one, where you're really missing what Zach LaVine can bring to the team, because you just need a bucket to stop these runs that the Mavs are going on, and they're just letting this game get completely out of hand. And LaVine is the best guy you have on the court in a moment like that to say, hey, like, just give me the ball, put it up, he's going to take care of it, and he's at least going to get you back on the board. But it's a 17-0 run before Vooch can get a bucket. It's a 12-0 run before, I think it was Patrick Williams got a 3 to try to stop it. And even during all of that, besides the runs, like I said, you have all these turnovers, you're just missing tons of shots, and you just don't have a guy on the court tonight that's really having an efficient day. Even Vooch, who they went away from again, primarily in the second half, only took 2 threes on the night and missed both of them. Like, I'm not going to crush a guy for missing his 2 3-pointers, but Vooch didn't have his best game of the season. So you went to Dallas and you played one of the best teams in the NBA, and the Bulls probably played their worst game of the season. Like, obviously they've been down, these last 4 games before this. They have the 2 20-point comebacks. They get down by 17. They get it close. They get down by 13 or 15. They get it close. In this game, the Mavericks just run away with it, and they just bullied you in this one. So it's not a fun game to discuss. A couple other highlights or lowlights through this game that we got to point out here. I did think the rebounding was generally better, which we'll dive into more in the next segment, but they were kind of talking about this on the broadcast. And this is the problem without Zach LaVine and without Lonzo Ball, is that when you have all these guys not taking shots, I also thought we might see Billy Donovan make changes quicker, like specifically with Ayo, who will kind of look more at his struggles in the third segment of the show tonight. But really, the fact that he's so bad early in this game and just bricking three and airballing threes, and Billy Donovan's not taking him out quicker, I thought we might see with LaVine out again, as they were pointing out on the broadcast, was just maybe Billy Donovan would go to his bench just a little bit sooner in this game, as it's really just quickly getting away from you. I mean, I'm looking just through my game notes here. I mean, it's what, 9-5, and then it's all of a sudden it's 18-9, and that's I think it was a Kyrie, Luka, and maybe even a Klay Thompson three that really just ran away with this thing super fast and just got the Mavs the lead. So they just don't have an answer, for those three guys, and I got to reemphasize, they don't expect them to have answers for three players of that skill set. But tonight they just had no way to stop these runs, and it really just made it impossible for the Bulls to get a win. I will say one positive, from just the game action that we saw is early on, the Bulls did have 10 fast break points. Josh Giddey gets a kind of a breakaway moment where they pass it deep down the court to him, and he gets a breakaway early in the second, and that's already the Bulls' 10th fast break point of the game. Now they only ended up with 20, and that's obviously not something you can totally control at all times when the Mavs are shooting the ball pretty well. But that's one positive from this game early on that I would say as well, that just the fast break points. So the key for the Bulls is simple. You got to stop turning the ball over. You got to stop being this reckless with the basketball. You're not going to win basketball games having 23 turnovers and giving up 28 points on them, especially against a good team like this. So if the Bulls want to really get this thing going in the right direction, when LaVine and Lonzo get back on the court, LaVine probably tomorrow night, they just got to find a way to stop turning the ball over so much. It's just not going to work. It's not acceptable for what an NBA team should look like, and it's something that's clearly going to plague this team all season. And they just kind of all do it in different ways, whether it's reckless passing, not really knowing where your guys are at on the court and throwing the ball away. But it's just not sustainable basketball. And you really, in a night like tonight where we went over those runs, 17-0, 12-0, 13-0 in three different quarters, you need someone to be a stopper on offense and defense. You need someone to get a bucket in that moment. And that's really where, again, even though I thought they used Vooch more in the first half, where, again, in the second half they went away from, even in these runs where you could slow it down a little bit and really try to take the Mavs' pace out of the game, where they're just running up and down the court on you, you could go to Vooch, and they just kind of chose not to do that. And honestly, they're not going to change their philosophy because we tell them to. But maybe this team's just not built to play the way that they are designed to, or they're trying to run the Bulls right now. Up and down the court, a ton of three-point shots. They shot 28% from the three-point line tonight. Maybe they're just not, they don't have the shooters to do that, and there needs to be a real come-to-Jesus moment here for what the Bulls' offense is going to look like this season and how it needs to change. Well, it's all with a grain of salt until we see, LaVine and then hopefully Lonzo back on the court in the next handful of games if it looks better. But we just know 8 games into the season, now at 3-5, the Bulls are not consistent enough from the three-point line to be going up and down the court, jacking up threes, and hoping that it's going to work. So lots of bad tonight in a 119-99 loss. But what do you expect when the team that won the Western Conference, you go to their town and you just don't have the skill set to match up with those guys? So the Bulls are 3-5 on the season. If you're already playoff looking where they're at, thankfully teams like the Milwaukee Bucks are off to a terrible start. So a lot to improve on. I will take that as a positive from this game as well, is that the stuff that they're bad at is really fixable. It's not just being a bad basketball team, on a night in and night out basis, but they can fix these turnover problems. They can get buckets. They can take better shots. They can get Vooch the ball more frequently in a basketball game. They're just not doing those things. So all of that's a positive in a way that at least they're not just a totally broken basketball team. All right, when we get back, let's talk about Matas Buzelis. Best game yet as a member of the Chicago Bulls. Definitely the number one thing to take away from this game. Really happy with Billy Donovan and the way he used him in the third and fourth quarter, with a bone to pick as well of what happened in the second quarter. We'll do that next year on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Guys, if you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom, it's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims. So you can feel confident knowing you can stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare, providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works best for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. This product mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Prescription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, let's see what we're talking about here. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments? I rent my house right now. Just watching your money vanish into thin air. It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Bilt Rewards comes in. Bilt is a breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. Use points to jet off on dream vacations. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through Bilt Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Bilt points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Point Guys and Bankrate. Earn points by paying your rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use your URL so they know where we sent you. Joinbilt.com/lockedonnba to start earning points with your rent payments today. Biggest positives from this game, very simple. Dalen Terry, I'm going to shout out first, but also we have to focus on Matas Buzelis. He had his best game as a member of the Chicago Bulls and as an NBA player. Look, this is a guy that we knew he's definitely lean. Like, he's a little dude in a lot of ways. They were kind of busting his chops there at the end of the broadcast about hitting the gym and putting on some weight. But we know he's going to be going up and down this year between the G League a little bit. Now, my bone to pick with Billy Donovan is after he has an excellent start to the game in the final 6 minutes and 39 seconds of the first quarter, he is nowhere to be found in the second quarter. And that's something that I did not really enjoy to see. Now, he obviously got a lot of run in the third and fourth. I think you have to take that with a little bit of grain of salt because, well, if they weren't getting blown out, like, would he have played in those moments? Like, would we see, Matas be out there, filling up the stat sheet a little bit in a more crunch time game? Now, if you've been listening, if you haven't, like, we'll just kind of circle back to the very first show we did about Matas and what some of my hopes were for this season. Well, it was in moments like this where the Bulls are having a bad basketball game that you let him get the most experience he can on the court. We don't know, like, if he's going to be, some franchise-saving basketball player, but tonight he plays 23 minutes. He's 4 of 9 from the field. The biggest positives, he's 3 of 4 from the three-point line. I don't know if he had hit one. I don't think he had hit one yet this season. Before tonight's game, he has 9 rebounds, ends up with 13 points total. So that's the biggest positive in this game. It's just the way he looked and the comfortability. It kind of felt like it was there more as soon as he came onto the court and the end of the first quarter, just like what he kind of fits in as a role as a member of the Chicago Bulls. So that's definitely the bright spot in this game because as bad as the season could go, like you have to find positives in it. And besides just thinking about, potential moves at the trade deadline, but what we can see, game in and game out from games 1 through 82 from Modest Buzelis is going to be maybe the most important thing for the Chicago Bulls this season. Because as you're just building this young core and you're in this weird mode that we all know they're in, where like they're not probably the worst team in the NBA, but they're not a great team either. Just seeing that development from him is huge. And he just looked much more confident taking the three in this game. I thought, he had, even at the end of the fourth quarter there, he went up for a block and it was a really athletic play. He just missed it. So a lot of good. They finally have done this thing where, like in the first couple games, like against Giannis, Brandon Ingram, he was getting matched up one-on-one in the post. So I don't know if the Mavericks just decided not to try to take advantage of the same way, but he doesn't end up on Luka in the post or Kyrie in the post. So even that is a good thing that they seem to adjust away from for him. But it's just the only really bright spot from the Chicago Bulls in this 119-99 loss to the Dallas Mavericks is what Modest was giving you. So hopefully we see more of him. Really a night like tonight is where when Zach LaVine's back, when Lonzo Ball is back, like where does he fit? Well, how does he fit into this rotation is kind of the questions that will start to be next. That like as he develops, as he looks better, as he looks more comfortable, like he's probably taking those minutes from THT. Probably no one else on this team. Maybe, I know they don't necessarily play like the same positions, but obviously we won't see a lot of Julian, like a lot of Phillips when those guys get back. So there's a role for Modest to be as a closeout guy at the end of the first and third quarter, and maybe an early guy in the second and fourth. And you're obviously not going to be using him in crunch time at this point in his career. You don't want him out there in crunch time, but just an overall positive game for him. The other one I think we got to talk about a little bit just from tonight's game and what we saw was definitely Dalen Terry. He's just the Energizer Bunny kind of a player that you have. He's a really solid role player for the Bulls coming off the bench. It just feels like when he comes in, the pace picks up on offense, on defense. He goes 3 for 7 from the field tonight with 1 3-pointer, 4 rebounds, an assist, and ends up with 10 points total as well. So you get 23 points from Dalen Terry and Modest Buzelis in this game. So of all the bad things that happen, you can at least look at those two guys, I think, in a good way, and just say, okay, like they good. And Julian Phillips, he went 4 for 5 in 15 minutes and got you, he ended up with 10 points, 8 points as well. So there are things to take away from this game. That it's not all bad. That's one of the things I think Bulls fans, like, we have to still adjust ourselves to this season, is that there's going to be games like this where it's pretty ugly, but you have to find the small positives where you can. And there were a lot more negatives in this one, and we're going to kind of dive into those next. But besides just Billy Donovan taking him out and not using him at all in the second quarter, but having to use him a lot in the third and fourth, was just an overall a bright spot in this game of what Modest Buzelis can do, and the comfortability that he had in this game. I think it's just a huge win for the Chicago Bulls tonight, at least in terms of feeling like he's got something to play with, because it just was not been pretty so far as a member of the Chicago Bulls. Now, there are negatives, like we talked about, the runs that happened in this game, the lack of, once again, like I don't want to crush the Bulls. Like, I don't think it's for effort. Like, I don't view this as like an effort problem for this team. It just looks like a team that is just outmatched defensively on any given night, but especially on a night like tonight. So the runs really hurt you, the turnovers really hurt you, but at least you got that. There are two guys from tonight's game that really were negative in a big way. And one of them, I would say I have really no concern for. One of them, it's getting to the point now, 8 games into the season, where it's like it kind of looks like a broken jump shot for Io. So we're going to get into that next. My name is Joe George. You can find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. If you're listening on audio, make sure you head over to YouTube. If you haven't done yet, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you guys listening. The numbers have been awesome to see all the people listening to these postcast shows on audio. So thank you to all of you listening on audio. But come hang out with us in the chat as well after the game. Come vent with us, or hopefully talk about better things to come throughout the season. So we'll get into Io and kind of what's going on with him and Kobe White next year. It is the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. All right, let's talk about Game Time. I love Game Time. Game Time's how I use, get my tickets for any game I'm going to, whether I'm traveling or it's here in where I live right now in Houston. But if I'm going back home to Chicago, Game Time's my go-to app all the time. Also for concerts as well. Never forget that. Like, it's not just for sporting events. You can get concert tickets via Game Time as well. Now, this is a cool deal coming up here. The first edition of the tournament. Oh man, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna butcher this. Choque de Gigantes will take place at Lone Depot Park from November 8th, so coming up this weekend, to the 10th, featuring the top league teams from Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. Game Time is offering 10% off of tickets right now. The duration of this deal runs from now until 11/8, so you got 2 days to get in on this deal for 10% off for tickets to see teams from Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. Don't forget, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. I always talk about this, but it's absolutely my favorite deal. I love the seat views before you buy, just so you know really what you're getting into before you buy your ticket and go to see your favorite team play. So if you're looking to see the Bulls play against the Timberwolves or whatever other, the next couple home games they got coming up, always use Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So the big part of this game, that besides just the turnovers and the runs that the Mavericks were going on that were really frustrating to watch, and one of them has been frustrating pretty much this entire season. We'll start with Kobe White, so a little bit less of a concern of what he's doing this year. But he has a tough night. Again, he's 1 for 7 from the three-point line, 3 for 13 overall, and just really not able to get it going on a night where you needed him. But that's kind of happens. Like, whether Zach LaVine's out there or he's not, like, there are nights where Kobe White is just kind of an ice cold shooter for the Bulls. I mean, he attacks the basket always with aggressiveness. Like, he's not afraid to take the shots. But there are just nights like tonight where he's just not simply good enough. And when the Mavs are going on a 17-0 run and a 12-0 run and a 10-0 run, or a 13-0 run, sorry, like, you need someone like Kobe White to step in and make a bucket. And he was just not capable of doing so. So, frustrating game for Kobe White tonight specifically. Another guy that I think you can pinpoint some of the not going to Vooch enough in the second half. I mean, that's the guy who has the ball in his hands a lot of the times, him and Io both, and like, they have to find a way between the two of them and Josh Giddey to actively get Vooch more involved. Josh Giddey, not a good night either. 3 for 9 from the field. Did hit, one three-pointer in this game, but only 6 assists. Now, there's so many shots being missed, like, you expect the assist numbers, to be down. But I really liked what we saw 2 games ago from Giddey when he was driving to the paint and the teams were collapsing on him and he was dishing it out. But that just seems to be maybe a one-game wonder a little bit. Like, we're just not seeing that as much right now from Giddey. So, tough night for him as well. But really the one is Io Dosunmu. Tonight he is 2 for 13 from the field. He's 2 for 10 from the three-point line. So he's not afraid to take the shots. That's for sure. But they're not going in. And they really haven't been going in all season. This season, and this is why it's like not a long-term concern, because it's impossible for it to be this bad. Because Io so far in his career has shot 37.6% from the three-point line, 31.2% and 40.3% from the three-point line the last 2 years. So he's been a pretty good three-point shooter. He currently sits at 36% for his career, and this doesn't factor in tonight's game even. So coming into tonight, he was shooting 16% from the three-point line. That's not good. That's really bad. And to be 2 for 10 from the three-point line tonight is really challenging. And for Io, I would challenge him if I was Billy Donovan and just say, why? Like why, if you're this bad on a nightly basis, are you continuing, like, as the game's going poorly, to continue to try to get this three-point shot up and try to find a way to, just to, like, get out of rhythm that way? Maybe wait till the next game, because he can't attack the basket. We saw in the last game, the first game without LaVine, he had 10 points in the first quarter, and he wasn't shooting the three ball well in that game, but he was attacking the bucket and trying to get to the free throw line and be creative in different ways. But to only make 2 shots in a game overall, and they're both from the three-point line, but you're 2 for 13 overall is just not going to cut it for what we expect now from Ayo. And maybe this is a hometown bias that we all have, like being like obviously like being from Illinois, like going to Illinois, like you want Ayo to have more success than this, but this is kind of the guy that I look back to the beginning of the show when we talked about when Levine and Lonzo were healthy, is that if he's not shooting this well, you just got to take him out. Like, you just got to take him out of the game and let someone else come in. And right now, because of these injuries early in the season, you just don't have him. And if you missed the update from Casey Johnson, Zach LaVine could be back versus the Timberwolves. Looked great in warm-ups today, was getting a full sweat on. And if he's not back, he'll definitely play on Saturday, barring some sort of disaster. Not even disaster, but just some sort of setback on the season. And Lonzo Ball definitely feels like he's much farther away from returning this season. So there's not a really bad night from Ayo in a game full of bad for the Bulls where you're not playing good defense, you're turning the ball over too much. To have a guy that's in your starting lineup go 2 for 13, really to have Kobe White and Ayo go 5 for 16 or 5 for 26 on the night and go, 3 for 17 from the 3-point line, that's just not going to cut it. And that's where they definitely miss Zach LaVine the most. And this is the reality of, if people have wondered, like, what does life without Zach LaVine look like? Again, we saw a lot of it last year, of course, but this season might be a lot more of this, where just the new style of Bulls basketball, the elevated 3-point shooting, that without him, like, they're really going to struggle at times on the court. And it's one of those where I get the idea of wanting to trade him eventually, but my gosh, it's going to be a long season if they trade Zach LaVine, if this is the kind of basketball that we're going to begin. So the Bulls lose 119-99. We will be back tomorrow night after the Timberwolves game to recap that one as they take on Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. That still sounds super weird to say. Back in Chicago. Bulls lose 119-99. Thanks for watching the Locked On Bulls postcast here on Locked On Sports Chicago. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching later or are listening on audio. My name's Joe George. We will talk to you tomorrow night after Bulls Timberwolves. Peace.